Apple just released the first developer beta of iOS 18.4. Here is everything new and some things we're still waiting on. Before we get into all the new features and changes, if you want to keep up to date with the latest Apple news and reviews, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. So this beta has apparently been repeatedly delayed, but it is finally out and I got it installed on my iPhone 16 Pro Max here. For me, it was just over 7 gigs, but depending on your device, that size may vary. So let's go ahead and get into the new features that you can expect to see. Starting out with the one that I'm probably most excited for, which is a new addition to Apple News Plus. So if we go into the News app, go over to Following, there's a new category for food. This is basically a new part of that subscription and allows you to have a bunch of access to several different publications, and it's all bringing together recipes, tips, everything into one centralized location. So if you're already an Apple News Plus subscriber, you're going to get access to this and just additional functionality for what you're already paying for. Inside of food, you'll see on top there's a recipe catalog as well as saved recipes. If you scroll down, you'll see a bunch of different news stories. These are all pulled from the Apple News editors that are going to pull and curate all this, so things that you're going to care about that are related to food and restaurants. Of course, there is a whole recipe catalog that you can jump into. It is filterable, so you can look for like quick meals or ones based on chicken or dinners, anything like that. If you find one that looks interesting and you like it, you can go ahead and share it with someone. You can save it or you can cook it. When you go to cook a recipe, it's going to give you a list of the ingredients. By the way, it'd be really nice to just kick this over into the Reminders app, like where you have your shopping list, so that way you could have like what you want to shop for pulled over from the Apple News section. Maybe they'll add that in the future. But you'll have your ingredients as well as all the directions that go step by step. And maybe it's just me, but you cannot tell me that this interface is not built for some sort of home hub smart display. Like, I can see myself walking through these steps with that display in the kitchen. You know, that's supposed to be coming soon. So make sure you subscribe to the channel, and I'll keep you up to date with all of those rumors as we get closer to an announcement of some sort. So aside from saving recipes, you can go to the top and view all the ones that you've saved in the past. Again, filterable here or searchable. I think this is going to be really useful. Moving on to Apple Intelligence. Apple Intelligence is expanding in a bunch of ways, starting off with new localizations. Apple Intelligence is available in French, German, Italian, Portuguese, Spanish, Japanese, Korean, simplified Chinese, and there's localized versions for English in Singapore and India. So a bunch of new languages supported on Apple Intelligence. Unfortunately, we're not getting the new version of Siri here that we were expecting. We really thought that was coming in 18.4, but rumors have said that Apple is struggling with this. There's a lot of holdups in getting everything polished as much as they want it to be. So based on the fact it's not in this beta so far, it could arrive in a future beta, or it could be arriving in 18.5 later this year. We'll have to see how that unfolds as we get closer to the release of iOS 18.4. Another thing that I noticed right away is tap to Siri or typing to Siri is so much faster now. Just tap the bottom of your screen twice, it pops up. It's really quick. That's a really nice new addition, just quickening up all of those animations. Another feature that we saw before was the new Apple Intelligence-powered Mail app that is now available on iPad and Mac when they are running the latest betas as well. It can basically break things down into different categories like transactions and promotions, things like that. It first debuted on the iPhone with iOS 18.3, and now it's coming to the Mac and iPad as well. Inside of Image Playgrounds, Apple brought that third animation style. So we had two before. Apple removed Sketch. It was like announced at WWDC, and then they pulled it by the time we actually got the release. Now it is here, so there are three animation style that you can choose from, Sketch being the newest. It looks really nice. It's just another option, but they're all very cartoony, and there's no realistic ones like we're seeing on other platforms. Apple likes to keep things like that don't look like they're real. They definitely look like they are sketched and made up. Apple doesn't want to be blurring the reality lines here, so I think that makes sense, and I'm glad they're adding additional styles. If you're a fan of Genmoji, this probably won't matter to you, but for anyone who is not using it all that often quite yet, Apple's made it a bit easier to see that you can use them. When you're describing an emoji on the emoji keyboard, when nothing shows up, there's actually that little icon on the right. It now says Genmoji, so you'll know that's creating a new emoji, generating a new emoji, versus just picking one out. So I like that they made it a little more obvious for people who weren't aware that they could create them themselves. There are two new Australian voices for Siri, so not a whole new version of Siri that we were hoping for, but at least we have two new Australian voices for it. priority notifications. So now Apple Intelligence will identify what is a priority notification to let those go through, muting all of the other ones. So this should help reduce interruptions, similar to other focus mode, but really using that AI to pull out the important notifications to alert you. I'm very excited for this one. You can enable this by going into settings, then notifications, and then priority notifications. Again, this is beta, so don't expect anything, completely polished, but this should be really interesting to see how it evolves. Inside of Control Center, we have new ambient music modes. Apple's had this in a few different places. You could get into there for like an accessibility feature. You could actually just find ambient music inside of the music app, but now there are 4 new toggles that you can add directly into Control Center. So just one tap to pull into these different listening modes. The different modes are sleep, chill, productivity, and well-being. You can add each of these as their own toggle. When you tap on them, they start playing, just kind of like music in the music app, but there's no dedicated app for this. Of course, if you go into the dynamic island or on the lock screen, you can control playback by play or pause or skipping tracks, because there are different tracks here. Even with just the sleep one, it's playing a track and then going on to the next one. So you can control those, just no actual specific app control, at least not yet. This one's also pretty exciting. They're adding an actual Apple Vision Pro app for iPhone. Now, this isn't available currently on the first beta of 18.4, but it will be arriving soon by the time this is released in April. Now, this is going to be a whole thing for Vision Pro. Apple is adding Apple Intelligence there with image tools and or writing tools, image playground, all of that stuff. But the actual app on iPhone is going to be really helpful as well. You can basically manage your Vision Pro from your iPhone. You can queue up content to download, whether it's apps or videos, anything like that, and explore new content. There's also a really easy way to set up guest mode. So it's a guided way to do it. So before, if I was showing someone how to use Vision Pro, I'd have to put it on, enter into guest mode, then take it off and hand it to them, then they'd go through that whole setup. Now I can just set it up on my iPhone and hand them the headset. Way faster that way. You can still control what apps they can use, all of that. Just a very streamlined process should make it easier for people to demo Apple Vision Pro to their friends and family. The privacy indicator dot that is up there in the status bar, it now is like moved to the left a little bit, and there's a black background behind it, which makes it a little bit easier to see depending on the background of your phone. There's a new shortcut option to jump directly into a conversation in Messages. So before you could use a shortcut to open Messages, but now you can jump directly to a conversation. So if you want to set up a shortcut to just jump into your text messages with your other half, perfect, you can now do that. Inside of the default apps category inside of settings, we have a new app type, which is the translation apps. So Apple does have its own translation app. Now you can choose a different default app once those are supported. So if you don't like Apple's translation app, cool. You can choose other ones anytime you need to translate something. It'll jump to that instead of Apple's. For podcasts, we have 2 new widgets that you can add to the home screen, one for your library and one for your shows. It just shows that information there on the widget on your home screen. 9to5Mac also spotted in the code for iOS 18.4 a new reference to a home category. Apple currently has several different categories set up. One's for like iPhone, Apple Watch, iPad. There's even audio, which is for HomePod. But home is an entirely new category. Of course, likely referencing that new smart display that I talked about earlier in the video. We're getting closer and closer to that release. Apple's adding more code to iOS to help support it, so I'm really excited. I feel like we're getting closer to that launch, maybe around spring. We're gonna have to see, but I'm pretty excited for it. Unfortunately, there's things we didn't get here, like that new version of Siri. We also didn't get the robotic vacuum cleaner support that we thought was coming. These could come in subsequent betas before 18.4 is released, but as of right now, they're not available. Hopefully things change, and I for sure will keep you updated. If you spot any other changes in this update, let me know down below in the comments. Otherwise, subscribe to keep up to date with all the latest news, and I'll catch you in the next video.